Hey, happy Monday, everybody. Lawler here. Going to be breaking down NA Regional 3 for the spring split. Not just NA Regional 3 for the spring split, but also the fact that it is the very last regional for North America for the entire year. A lot of things going down in RLCS. We've got wildcard stuff to talk about and everything in the upcoming weeks. So if you guys want to make sure you don't miss out on all things that we're going to be talking about with wildcard breakdowns, World Championship tickets being on sale, all that kind of stuff in the next coming weeks, make sure you guys hit subscribe, turn on notifications. But with that said, we're going to jump straight into the bracket. We're going to go day by day like we always do. And we're going to be talking about day one, which is the upper quarterfinals and the lower round two. And then we'll get into day two and day three. And then go and talk about what it means. There's a couple things to pay attention to going into this regional. Obviously, with it being the last one, that means that not only are they playing for the potential to make it into the spring split in London, but also a chance to help out for wildcard spots going into the World Championship. A lot of things on the line, a lot of teams trying to fight for playoff contention, especially over in like OCE. If you guys would like to see me break down minor region stuff as well, let me know in the comments down below for wildcard, because it's going to get pretty complicated if you aren't aware of it. There was 11 teams in North America that were still fighting for spots to get to the World Championship, but the big ones that were talked about, G2 has already qualified. Then you were talking about V1, Space Station, FaZe, Complexity, Envy, and a handful of others. Energy also needing a pretty strong run to make things happen. So that was kind of the question I proposed in my video while doing predictions. Is this going to be the first World Championship or the first RLCS live event to where Garrett doesn't attend? And in my predictions, I said no. I had them losing to FaZe in the upper bracket and then having a hard time battling through, with Envy qualifying just barely by points. So those things to keep in mind. So G2 is already qualified for the spring major. They're fine. Version 1 needs to make top 6. If they win their first two series of the Friday day 1 event, then they are in. If they make it to the upper semifinals, you also saw FaZe, Complexity, Space Station, Envy, all kind of fighting as well. So a lot of things to determine and figure out. So that said, I will say day 1 kind of started as expected. All the high seeds really pushing through. You saw G2 and Rogue. I'm pretty sure, predict. I got to pull up my predictions and see if I was right on these. I know a lot of these I was pretty happy with the way that they went based upon what I was thinking. I did expect Rogue to upset Ghost, which they ended up doing. I did think that we were going to see Oxygen beat Envy, but it ended up being the other way. Envy was able to play on, which was also really interesting to see because Illusion was feeling under the weather. So Turbo Pulsa, the 4-time world champion, ended up stepping in. So other than that, the only prediction that did not go according to plan early on was the fact that I did think Oxygen was going to beat Envy, but it was actually Envy, like I said, with Turbo coming in. Very back and forth series. Also, Sonics upsetting Complexity. That was the other one that caught me off guard, because Complexity obviously needing a pretty solid performance to push themselves into the major. From there, second round, pretty straightforward. G2 over Rogue, FaZe over NRG. That was the one that caught everybody off guard. That was the one that I also predicted that I assumed was going to happen. To my knowledge, the stat was that Energy had not lost to FaZe in 6 months. And I'm like, you know what? This is going to be the time that it does happen. We obviously had some fun with storylines later on, but primarily this was the one that I thought was going to be the actual important one, which it did show. FaZe Clan trying to be as aggressive as possible, try to get Typical more involved, show some consistency, accuracy issues here and there, but it just felt like, even though it was close, 3 games with 1 goal apiece, 2 overtimes, I think, in that one, it was FaZe that kind of runs away with it. I didn't think Space Station was going to have any issues with Sonics, which they didn't, and then V1 has seemed to figure out Envy, who did put up a really good fight. 2 1-goal games and an OT to start off, and then a 3-0 to close it out. Beast Mode continues to hit some pretty nasty shots and do what he does, but between redirects and everything else, that was a day 1 broadcast for me that I did that normally with V1 they go very long. We were done in like an hour and a half. It was quick, easy, and I was done at like 1:30 in the afternoon. So that was a pretty quick day for me for casting, so I got to watch some of the lower round matches. Randoms ended up beating Ghost, which I did have Ghost probably winning that one, but it just seems to be that even with 3 overtimes and a couple 4 out of 5 1-goal games, super close series, Randoms ends up upsetting Ghost. So not sure if Mental got ahead of them or what, but pretty tough there. Akarush starts to show some resilience. They've been pretty back and forth. Pittsburgh Knights starting to make their mark and get into these top 16 events a little bit more frequently. even though I think they're looking for roster changes. We'll talk more roster changes. A lot of teams are going to be doing some weird stuff now that the season is over for a lot of people. So I'll try to keep you guys up to date on that stuff. But Accru ends up sweeping them. We also saw Complexity Shopify Rebellion play a really close series, which I did have Sonics beating them anyway. I would have done the same thing for Complexity. And then Oxygen beating Stromboli, the former Charlotte Phoenix team. I think that Stromboli roster put up a really good fight against V1 in the first round, but in that lower round, they had a tough fight. Lower round 2 then, and the last matches of the day. Envy ends up bopping randoms. We saw Accru over Sonics. That was a really good series. 3 overtimes to end in that one. And then the one that everybody's talking about, Energy and Complexity. You saw the tweets from pretty much everybody on the timeline, the reactions of the casters on the broadcast, and Dazzler and James. Across the board, there was a lot of different reactions. But for the first time in Rocket League history for North America, Garrett G will not be at the LAN. Energy not qualifying for the major because despite being up 2-0 in the series, Complexity is able to reverse sweep Energy and close it out. The play most people are talking about is the Shad AJG Raise Bowl. There was like a redirect, I think, by AJG or something like that in the top right that went in. That was unbelievable. So some pretty big moments in there. There was an overtime in game 2 that Energy won, but other than that, kept to 1 goal. That's really tough. So Energy just not able to find the back of the net against an aggressive Complexity. Then you saw Rogue Oxygen. This one, I thought that Rogue was going to be able to pull out. They almost did in a reverse sweep, but Oxygen is able to hold out. So that gives us our top 8. G2 FaZe, Space Station V1, Envy, Accru, Complexity, Oxygen, which goes into day 2. And it started with Envy and Accru. Also very close series. It is good to see Accru start to kind of find some form. Unfortunately, it's for the end of the season. And you never really know how that's going to go long term, but this series had 4 overtimes, all 1-goal games, and game 4 was 1-0 in favor of Accru, but this one was a slugfest and a battle between both rosters. Some ugliness on both sides and some things to figure out, but overall, Envy, pretty sure the last goal was passed to Turbo Pulse in midfield, and then he put it away. So Turbo Pulse is super sub closing out. And then Complexity, Oxygen, Complexity also stays alive, keeps their major potential there as well. So at this point, we've seen G2 secure first seed overall going into the Spring Split Major because NA performed better in winter. Will have the number 1 seed, so that is G2. You also saw V1 secure their spot at the Major at this point, and we were still trying to determine what was going to happen between FaZe Complexity and Space Station. Envy was also secured at this point immediately after because when we saw version 1 and Space Station play, V1 ended up in game 7 beating Space Station, a completely back and forth series until the very end. V1 does destroy the pattern and wins 2 in a row, with it of course going to game 7 overtime. Probably one of my favorite series to watch. Space Station and V1 always play really close series. We've seen them do that last time as well. It's always been super entertaining. So V1 does end up beating Space Station. They've beat them now 2 out of the last 3 times, I think it is. But it's always a really tough one. They tend to go back. Both teams are really good at adjustments. Credits to both Fireburner and Chrome on that. And they ended up closing out. But because they knocked Space Station down, that automatically guarantees that Envy is able to secure a spot because of their placements of top 6 in Regional 1 and top 4 in Regional 2. So no matter what, they are solidified because Space Station does knock down. So Envy is guaranteed in. So at that point, we've got 3 teams, and we are waiting on Complexity, FaZe, and Space Station to see what's going to happen with those 3. FaZe Clan and G2 play each other. Game 7, super entertaining series. And FaZe on a tear ends up beating G2. We didn't think it was possible for G2 to lose. At this point, they are 13-2 after losing this entire for this spring split. Up to this point, I think they've lost only 1 series. They went 5-1, and there's a bracket reset in the regional, which they won. They went 5-0 last regional, and then in this regional, they're already up 2. So yeah, it's been pretty crazy. At this point, they're now that put them at 12-2 overall throughout spring. So FaZe Clan beating them was pretty surprising. This is also the FaZe Clan that people are talking about who hasn't won a regional since they brought in Sipical. The last time they won a regional was the very first one of the fall split. They won Fall Regional 1 with Illusion and haven't won one since. It's kind of escaped them. So we see FaZe. They look good. Offense is clicking. Things have been pretty solid. And then they go into that upper bracket final, which we'll talk about here in a sec. We then dropped down to the lowers. G2 Envy. I didn't think there was going to be even a fact that Envy got a win, so credit to them getting one. But G2 basically smacked them around, and then Space Station smacked around Complexity. Candidly, I saw who was going to be in those lower bracket matches, and I only watched very small bits and pieces. I had it up on my laptop. I was watching Stranger Things, and that's kind of ironic because of what AJ started doing on the timeline. If you haven't seen AJ on Twitter, he has literally been putting out some of the creepiest, like, he's basically embodied the villain of Stranger Things in season 4 and has brought that to the timeline, and it is now cursing his opponents. And it's been a little creepy, but also made for some pretty funny moments. Certain people like Calm tweeting out blessings instead, and it's been spicing up the timeline. But AJ starts cursing his opponents, and it ends up paying off. So Space Station ends up 4-0ing. G2 started 4-1 in their series. They both move on, and at this point, with the way that the teams are and the points that are going to be allocated, we have wrapped up. At the end of day 2, we know exactly who's going to the major. We got G2, FaZe, V1, Space Station, and Envy. Envy has made it. So whether Turbo's going to be a super sub and play, or Illusion's going to be back, it is cool to see that both Illusion and Sipical now are there, despite the thing that happened with FaZe with the roster change. So pretty cool to see Illusion back. We'll see how that goes in London. So crazy stuff there. But Championship Sunday, day 3 of the regional, is all sunshine and rainbows. Everybody who's in it has qualified. Our top 4, FaZe, V1, G2, and Space Station, all of them will be there. They're just playing for seeding at this point, which is actually a pretty big deal when you're playing international competition. Having a higher seed does help. So all that said and done, we start day 3 with our upper bracket final, FaZe Clan and V1. V1 keeps it close in the score line. 2 overtimes. Game 1 was a 1-goal game, but that's about it. To my knowledge, I forget what the stat is, but I think V1 in all 6 regionals or something like that, or whatever they said. I forget what the stat was on broadcast, but V1 has never won on, I think it's Wasteland Night, ever. So they just don't do it. So yeah, pretty crazy stuff there. It is FaZe Clan. They are able to close it out. 4-0 clean sweep, and they find themselves in the grand finals. Offense looks impeccable. They do not look like they're going to be beaten. FaZe looks really, really good. But now they have to sit for essentially 2 hours before they get to play. So FaZe sit in the grand finals. They're waiting to see how things go. At this point, I think they've almost guaranteed themselves. Yeah, they've guaranteed the number 2 seed unless V1 makes it back to the grand final. So that's where they're looking. So V1 and FaZe now at this point are fighting for the number 2 seed overall. We then drop down to the lower semifinals. And it is G2 versus Space Station. This one was a really fun series. G2 starts up 3-0. They end up winning 3 in a row. They're on match point. And then Space Station gets the Game 4 win 3-0. And you're like, okay, you know, maybe G2 figured, hey, we won this one. They backed off mentality-wise. And Space Station makes some good adjustments. And then Space Station wins game 4 and 5 and 6. And we're like, oh no, is it actually going to happen? Is Space Station going to reverse sweep the series? Then G2's just like, no, just kidding. We're good. And then they win 4-2 and it closes it out. So Space Station, thank you for wasting about 25 minutes of our lives and not completing the reverse sweep. Should have just lost 4-0 and we could have gone along with it. But I appreciate the resilience. Put up a really good fight. Even more credit, like I tweeted out about G2 and their resilience. That in moments like that, it is pretty tough, but they're able to close it out and show that they are the best team in North America and still believe it. So they end up going in and with momentum despite a long day, absolutely smack V1. V1 does make it a really close series, I will say. Smacked isn't the right wording, but you're talking 2-1, 2-1 with an OT, 1-0, 2-3 with another OT. G2 then gets a 4-0, and then they close out 2-1 with yet another OT. So 3 overtimes, all 1-goal games, except for the 5th game. G2 ends up winning 4-2. Really impressive stuff. It's good to see, and obviously you guys know that because I do coverage and stuff for V1. I have noticed the trends of them. Usually they were a team that like was never clutch. They'd always lose in like game 5s and game 7s, but they've always been somewhat competitive. It is cool to see them consistency and their story kind of improve over the years. Just with the ability with like AXB to Gimmick to Calm to now Calm Beast mode and what's all going down. There is some pretty glaring issues though that I've noticed for V1, and I'm curious on what's going to happen next season. I'll do a video on that in the future because there is some pretty glaring issues, I think, with V1 if you haven't noticed them or what they may be. But yeah, we'll talk about that in the future just to kind of break that down. But I'm going to try to do that for some of the teams too, just in general during the offseason. But Some stuff that I really want to point out about that team, just because I have been seeing it develop a lot and would like to provide some insight on it. But G2 ends up with their offense keeping V1 on defense pretty much the whole time. I think they were averaging like 11, 12 shots a game again. It was kind of insane. So G2 now goes in the grand finals against the Cold FaZe. And even with that, they sweep them in the first series. Bracket reset. Because FaZe is yet to lose. They got to lose twice. G2 gets a win, which now counts as a loss for FaZe. Anybody who thinks that losing the first series in a bracket reset doesn't count as a loss, I mean, the wording spells it out. Either way, FaZe gets swept. It is a win for G2, which is crazy because if you guys remember my coin flip predictions from last Thursday, Coin predicted a 4-0 sweep for the team in the lower bracket. Pretty spooky. We then go to the final series, and it is G2 FaZe, and it goes the distance. Bracket reset, game 7 overtime. That's how NA likes to do it. They might like to give us entertainment and make it spicy. And it's actually FaZe Clan. The first time since Regional 1, FaZe Clan wins another regional, which is really impressive. It's a good time to be in the trend of winning. This one was a nail biter. A lot of inaccuracy from FaZe. A lot of shots that just off the mark. And it felt like they kind of took turns, but a lot of good looks, infield passes from FaZe, defense from G2, incredible. I've always been impressed by their counterattacks. The ability to, within a touch or two with the team clear, completely get it downfield and put pressure on has always been impressive. Chicago continues to have answers, but the number one thing and what's really cool is to see JNAPS kind of back on top. It's been a really long time since I think we've seen kind of that like second wave of some of these people's careers. And I think JNAPS is kind of at that point where even though he's been in the scene for a really long time and they haven't really seen like crazy success since E-League of 2017, 2018. I forget which one they won. 28. I don't remember. It's been a long time. I forget which E-League they won. I want to say 2017. They won the first one with Kronovi. Since JNAPS pretty much was called the knapsack then and like really hard carried, we haven't really seen JNAPS get kind of the love and the like prolific, like, wow, he is being able to just completely dominate. And over the course of, I would say, of the spring split and the tail end of the winter split, it's been really cool to see his impact and how that's paired with the fundamentals of Chicago. Chicago's accuracy has gotten so much better. His communication, the intangibles and stuff has been incredible. And then you pair an Atomic who can just do it all. So G2's been a lot of fun to watch. Really, really solid team. And again, over the course of the spring split, G2 is now 15-3. They've made it to the grand finals every single time. They have won 2 of them. And the first loss came in the grand finals, I think, against Space Station in Regional 1. And then their only other 2 losses came to FaZe in this tournament this past weekend. So FaZe, the only team that can beat G2 right now consistently. Then again, no one's been able to beat G2 technically consistently because they only have 3 losses in the last, 9 weeks. That's pretty crazy. It's a lot of success for G2, but it's also cool to see FaZe do the unthinkable. I honestly thought G2 was going to actually get all 3 regionals, but just goes to show how hard that really is, and it still remains not possible in North America. But again, massive congratulations to our North American teams, the 5, G2 and 1, FaZe and 2, V1 and 3, Space Station 4, and Envy, bumping out Complexity and Energy for the 5th seed. Those are your teams for North America going to the major. In upcoming videos, we'll be talking a couple things. Obviously, we got to talk about how the tickets for Dallas is going to be on sale. Details about the World Championship have come out. We'll be talking about that tomorrow. We've also got some stuff talking about EU predictions, playoff scenarios, all that kind of stuff coming up. But to kind of give you guys a heads up, EU is actually taking a week break. They've got the World Championships for the Collegiate Rocket League, or CRL, going on in Dallas, actually at DreamHack this next weekend. So this weekend coming up actually will not be Europe. It'll be the weekend after that. So I'll make sure to talk about that in details in the upcoming videos, but some pretty crazy stuff to discuss in the upcoming week. But if you guys enjoyed the content, as always, thumbs up, subscribe, notifications, and hopefully we see any questions, concerns in the comments, and I'll try to address everything I can. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.